Hey, hello. This is Marcus Williams. I am a digital artist and comic artist and writer and create character designer based out in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been doing illustration for over 20 years now. And I'm going to give you guys an example of my process. I'm a digital artist, which helps me cut a lot of time out and cut a lot of anxiety of messing up traditionally. Granted, I do know how to draw traditionally. It did take a learning curve. I learned back, gosh, I think it was 2003. I got my first digital pen tablet from Wacom, which is a digital pen tablet. It's pressure sensitive. It allows you to, let me give you an example here. This is a digital brush. So as I draw, I'm putting very, very little pressure, right, on this line. But if I wanted to, I can apply pressure and increase that line, and it follows that pressure. So a Wacom tablet is in fact a pressure sensitive digital tablet. It's pretty awesome, I gotta say. So that's what I'm using to craft this. The software I'm using today is a very cheap software. I love it because even though I can use Photoshop, this somehow I just have to do some tooling. I can create the smallest line, almost like a very, very thin, you know, like a web line, like a little piece of line. And then it somehow is crisp enough and to give me that thick line. I know I can set it up. Maybe I need to talk to someone who loves brush creation in Photoshop. But it doesn't give me, Photoshop doesn't give me the same kind of line. And I'm pretty sure, I'm almost positive it can if I set it up that way. But for now, I just need this software is a very cheap software. It's about 40 bucks. If you go online and buy it. It's called Paint Tool, S-A-I, Paint Tool Sai. The character I'm going to be drawing today is, in fact, a character from the comic that I create with my business partner. Our comic is called Tuskegee Heirs. We both co-write the series. I am the artist on the project as well. And it's a futuristic sci-fi action-adventure comic that is set 80 years from today. So we have 5 young pilots that are being trained secretly how to fly by a descendant of the Tuskegee Airmen. And the cool thing is, or I should say the stakes kind of get a little high because at their time in the future, manned flight is illegal. Manned piloting is illegal, I should say. And they're flying under the radar, but they're being trained in these rebuilt P-51 Mustangs from World War II. And they're learning how to fly because their mentor, Colonel Mars, has an inkling that the government is going to release something dangerous on the world very soon. They have access to this new power source that the rest of the world is almost ignorant to. And it turns out Colonel Mars, their sensei, so to speak, was right. When these giant, large robot armies just kind of descend on cities across the country and the world, the Tuskegee Heirs are the only pilots and or fighter pilots that can actually respond when this invasion starts. No one knows why the invasion starts. No one understands who's doing it. No one claims this giant robot army when the actual attack happens. But Tuskegee Heirs, these five teenagers, are the first to respond, and they are able to at least make a dent when this invasion happens. I don't mean invasion like aliens, but it is they are these giant robots just show up around the globe, and sure enough, even though it's illegal to fly planes, the Tuskegee Heirs are the only defense that civilians have. Oddly enough, they attack in Atlanta first. We did plug that on purpose. So the cool thing is, that's where our story starts. And our first introduction to the Tuskegee Heirs is with a brand new pilot to the team, Abel. Abel is a young pilot who has dreamed of flying a plane. And so in real life. And so amongst meeting the Tuskegee Airmen, the Tuskegee Airmen kids, the heirs, I'm sorry, he is introduced to the fact that they own these renovated P-51 Mustangs. The P-51 Mustangs, for those that don't know, were the actual fighter planes used by the Tuskegee Airmen, the real Tuskegee Airmen back in World War II. So Colonel Mars is teaching them on these older planes because it's just, kind of nostalgic, and it's also they're easiest to kind of get a hold of in this new future. So that's what I'm actually drawing a character. I'm actually going to be drawing one of the characters from that. I'm actually drawing Omar. Omar is one of the Tuskegee Heirs. He's one of the older teenagers. They're all teenagers for the most part. And he is he's our team historian, so to speak. So if the kids, they have a mission that sends them all over the globe. I mentioned the power source that is very, very rare, this very rare material that the kids are going to be searching for, and they need to get a hold of it before the enemy gets a hold of it, as much as possible anyway. So I'm doing a digital sketch, and I'll try to explain my process as I go. So that was the long elevator pitch for Tuskegee Heirs. And what I'll do, just for the sake of showing you guys something briefly, just to show you what I'm working from, I'll give you a quick look at the actual cover. Let's do posters. Where are we at? Posters and banners. And we should have something. Here we go. Let's go from this. This is the Tuskegee Heirs. This is the cover of the first graphic novel, the first volume 1 graphic novel. The character I'm going to be drawing today. This is from the top. We have Genesis, Ayana, who is the team leader, Omar, Abel, and Slip. This is our 5 young pilots. So I'm going to use this just as a reference piece as I'm working, so I can kind of sample the colors. But this way you guys have some sort of context as to what it is I'm drawing. Omar is here with the Samos. Again, like I said, this is a very futuristic story. So we kind of combined futuristic with history and so forth. We wanted the kids to, of course, have a very powerful and what's the word? A very powerful and valid respect for history. They look up to the Tuskegee Airmen, who were real American pilots. And we wanted to use that in our book in a way that taught kids that it's okay to look up to your past. It's okay to be proud of your past, even though every picture you've ever seen was in black and white. This was over almost 100 years ago now. So we wanted to use our kids to convey that kind of cool respect. It's something that isn't really taught in our society anymore, which is respecting our elders, respecting our past, finding out who you are through your lineage, and then really, really leaning on that wisdom from where you came from, and teaching you and giving you some ideas of where to go in your life. So my process now is I'm building a rough sketch that kind of sets in where everything is. Now I can do a very loose, there is a looser way to do this, where I am literally really just kind of blocking in, let's say this is his knee, this is his, his other leg. This is more of a contour line I could use where I'm drawing his skeleton to block in where things are. This is his pelvic here. So I'm choosing to use more contour sketch where I'm just blocking out his body. So, but I still get the same effect as I block in where I want things to be. That's the goal of this sketch. Digital sketch is no different from a traditional sketch. You're trying to make sure you're building a foundation, almost like a blueprint, that you can actually be happy with. And I think I'm pretty happy with that. The cool thing is I don't even have to erase these lines right now. If I wanted to. Digital art allows me to actually control the transparency as you see it fading, and I can create a new layer over here to the left in this panel. Here's my line layer. I can turn it off. Let me turn it back. I can move it around. If I wanted to, I can make it smaller. One of those things, one of those benefits that you don't have with traditional drawing paper, the versatility to adjust or make larger or smaller what you're sketching on and what you're building. Digital art provides something that is very, very flexible. And like I said, it takes away that anxiety. I actually had an issue as a young artist where I would always draw the character too large for the page, and I would never be able to draw their feet on the page because it was just, I didn't map it out. I didn't sketch properly. I didn't plan my drawings properly back in the day. So I would usually just try to tape on some paper and try to accommodate for that shortcoming. But in digital art, I don't have to do that. I can draw the character. I can start with just the top half of the character and end up building his body by just, adjusting the size of the sketch, live, like while I'm drawing. Say, oh, you know what? I want to draw his feet. Let me make his body smaller. Let me make the drawing smaller. So that is actually what's so awesome about digital art. I visit schools, and I always ask the question to kids. I said, is digital art, easier or harder? And I think the word digital makes a lot of people say, well, obviously it's harder because it's digital, but that's not the case. Harder is relative, of course, but what I'm asking them is it more difficult to draw digitally than it is traditionally? And it's a trick question because most, like I said, I think the word digital usually scares people, and if they've never dealt with digital art before. So when they say, I think digital is harder, I think it's harder, I get to show them, well, let's say all the things you can do traditionally versus digitally. And I just give them a walkthrough of all of the cool things that digital art can do. But it really helps. The comic is created 100% digitally. So again, it cuts down production time, relatively speaking, because me being the artist on the project, comic art is a team sport. It's supposed to be a team sport. When you're talking about creating all of this art, sequential art is the official term of what the art style that we are doing. Sequential art is literally just telling a story in sequence with images and or pictures and so forth. And the cool thing that I love about sequential art is you don't need words. It can be a silent story, or you can have multiple panels without one single word balloon telling you what's happening. That's a thing that they have in film as well. It's called show, don't tell. And it's very powerful when you do it right. You don't always need a word balloon to explain what's going on. And I love that. I really love that about comics. So that's where the style of this comic was, I wanted it to feel, when I started designing the art, I wanted this comic to feel like the goal was animation from the very start. We wanted to make this an animated show, and we still do. So I created a style that felt like it lived in both worlds, or it could live in both worlds. So looking at the comic art, I chose vibrant colors. I tried to stay away from heavy black areas like traditional Western comics and Eastern comics can do. But if you look at Marvel and DC, you have these heavy blacks and dark areas, like this area under his neck. Instead, I could have just chose to use color, but since we're doing a quick sketch, I just chose to fill it in with black. But that's how comics is really just a creative use of black on a page. It's a dynamic use almost of blacks. Where there's a shadow, you can fill it with complete black, and it'll be instantly, it would instantly feel like comics. So that's the style I tried to combine with an anime kind of feel, because again, we want this to be a cartoon. So I never wanted the fans of our book to think for one second that we weren't targeting making a animated feature. So, and that's another, I mean, what I just did there, sometimes I do things I should explain. So for instance, I'm trying to make a line that goes with his hairline, but as you can see, I'm erasing it just as soon as I put it down. That is another example of what digital art can do versus traditional line art. If it was traditional line art, if this was paper, I would have to erase that line each time. And I would have to go back. Ah, nope, I don't like it. Erase, 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 erase. And I would have had like eraser shavings all over my table. Don't have to do that with digital art. It's much quicker. This purple little color here is a selection color in this software. I'm not coloring the document purple, just so you're not worried. When I, of course, click another tool, you can see that there's these little marching ants, kind of going on top of the line there. I'm going to fill that with black just to quickly color that in. Another feature of digital art that you can't do yet. I don't know if they're working on it, man. I would love the day when they can translate some digital art, freedoms to traditional art. I don't even know what that would look like. It would be like some sort of augmented reality drawing, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. If they can do that with a real pencil or a real paintbrush one day, it would be very, very futuristic and groundbreaking. And a lot of people would probably be skeptical if they release that. Okay, so looking good. Let me go ahead and put his jacket on. So they have these cool bomber jackets that are inspired, of course, again, by the actual real Tuskegee Airmen. And added some shoulder pads to make it futuristic. I gotta admit, shoulder pads always make things futuristic. So that's what I'm gonna be drawing in. I designed their suit after about the very first conversation that me and Greg had in regards to these characters, and I said, give me a week, give me about a week. I'm gonna design everything, just give me a week. And sure enough, I wanted the suits to feel very, very traditional. I did not want them to be some sort of new looking, suits that wouldn't feel remnant of the Tuskegee Airmen. So I looked at pictures from the actual Tuskegee Airmen to help me and guide me to say, okay, well, how can I make it look like it's from that era as well as the future? So that's what the design you see here. They have the bomber jackets. They have these cool, shoulder pads, big futuristic belt buckle. But they also have, elements like the actual flight helmet, the pilot helmet, and the goggles. It wasn't meant to be steampunk. A lot of people see the goggles and say, "Oh, it's like a steampunk." And we're like, "Nope, nope. It's World War II." They had stuff. They had technology, they had jets and so forth, propeller planes, things like that. Cool. They had technology. It wasn't steampunk necessarily, but the goggles were a head nod to the original Tuskegee Airmen. So that's how they made it into the design. But this is a good start for showing you guys just the process. Now I'm going to jump into color real briefly here. I'm going to leave a lot of this stuff in sketch mode just so I can show you quickly how the color comes into play. And we can wrap up in just a moment here. As this is, what I wanted to show you is, again, the speed of this. Now there's two ways I can color this. I could, of course, just take the color that I want and just color underneath the lines. And then, again, what I mean by underneath, if you look over to this left layer panel over here, I'm hovering my mouse over it. This is the line layer. Okay, so if I move the line layer, you can see that it's underneath the color. I'm actually not touching any of the lines. I created a layer, and layers can be almost looked at as, if you need to understand the what a layer is in digital art, think of a transparent sheet of paper or plastic. If you're old enough, you remember schools and teachers in elementary used these overhead projectors back in class, and they would actually show they would use these transparent pieces of plastic sheets to do their instruction on, and it would project onto a white background, or pull down little background thing on the wall, and they were called just transparencies. So that is kind of what I'm creating. That's how you can understand layers. They're almost like transparent pieces of plastic paper, and as you layer them, you can actually control different elements through your art by using this layer system. Again, I'll show you. I'm going to move the color this time independently of everything else, and then I'll complete this drawing real quick. So again, the lines on top, the lines, see, I can take this, put it over here. Lines are fine, I can put it back. Control and undo are beautiful things. Again, something that we don't have in traditional art. If you mess up with markers or paint, you have to paint it out. You have to literally work it out and fix your problem physically. So this is where digital art really shines. I'm going to give a little bit of, so we got the shadows in there. I'm going to add the highlights to his face real quick. And I'll get his jacket in there real briefly. And this is me trying to hurry here so we get everything in there. My phone is bothering me, but it's okay. Just stay on the thing. Let me get there. Let me get his jacket in. Now we're on a speed run here. But again, it's a beautiful thing that we're trying to create. Our comic is an all ages book. It is, we're very conscious of not trying to offend or, these kids are not blood descendants of the Tuskegee Airmen. We wanted to respect the actual real live heirs of the Tuskegee Airmen, who are still very alive. It's only one generation ago. These are grandfathers and people that actually, have families are still very much alive and well. So we didn't want to do anything that would disrespect them. The kids are brand new pilots, they're not blood descendants, but they look up to that history and they're learning from that history. That was a very, very conscious choice that we made. And we're still making that choice with every story. Even going around the globe, the Tuskegee Heirs always look back to their history and their roots. Colonel Mars is, I guess, their equivalent of a Master Splinter, but he's not that old. He's still very nimble and can fight and will fight if he needs to protect the kids. But in this case, the kids absolutely take his lessons and his trainings to actually equip them with the right tools. They go up against a lot of futuristic tech and robots and machines and things like that. Kind of like G.I. Joe, where we want to show violence, but not against people. So they get to use these cool weapons to beat up robots, not human beings. So that was very conscious as well. But of course, the caveat, the takeaway is that the kids, in order to combat that large army, machine army, they get a hold of some very awesome jets that transform into giant robots. I probably left that out. I think I said it in my mind. I'm sorry. So that is the actual anime vibe, definitely influenced by Gundam and or Macross. Huge fan of anime, and I wanted to show there's no such thing as an anime that has 5 young black anything. So it's okay to be definitely influenced by, anime. There's the large robot or mech genre is super, super popular. It's been a thing since, 70s even. Gundam started back in the 70s. I witnessed Gundam as a young person and fell in love with those giant robots. So I'm still, of course, influenced by them. But for a new generation, again, it's cool to show something that hasn't been seen. So that's why I wanted to incorporate when me and Greg started talking about it. I was the one that was like, "Oh my God, dude, we can have jets transforming into giant robots." And Greg was like, "Martial arts and everything," and I'm like, "I'm designing the weapons. This is going to be great." So sure enough, that's exactly what's happening with this series. There's all of these cool influences and things that we love coming into one piece of art. So this is where I'm at. This is I wanted to at least show you guys my process and how quickly you can get something drawn up without you know um, having to be anxious about, oh man, I need to really be careful, or what if I mess up? It's okay to mess up. Absolutely okay. This is the draw of digital art, and it's why I love working with this medium. And I'd say it's hard. It's kind of hard to go back once you draw, and you get all of these benefits from digital media, all of these freedoms of quickly concepting something without worrying about, oh man, I need to be really careful. It's really hard to go back to that anxiety. It is a wonderful practice though. So from time to time, you will see me sketch on paper. Absolutely. I have not abandoned it. This year I have. I have not drawn on paper, I think, all year. This year during COVID, I just wanted to get as much work done as possible, as fast as possible. So I have to, admit my failures as a traditional artist this year. But that is what we're doing with this comic. This is my quick, display of some digital art. You can see more of my art on most social networks such as Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. I am Marcus the Visual, all one word. Marcus the Visual, Marcus The Visual VI. I'm sorry, Visual VISUAL. And the website for this comic is Tuskegee Heirs. Again, let me show you. It's HEIRS. Tuskegee Heirs. Flames of Destiny is the actual comic title. And you guys can easily buy the books from that website. You can actually follow our social media for Tuskegee Heirs as well. All of that is available online. We're working on creating some digital books, some digital offerings for the comics. So we're working on that. Be patient for that. We got the first graphic novel coming in digital form because it collects the first 3 issues. And all questions are welcome. If you guys should ever come upon any of those thingamabobbers, any of those social media things, and you want to know more about Tuskegee Heirs, please feel free. We will answer questions if you have them. If you have a comic shop in your local area and you would love this book to be carried there, it's always better for individuals to actually ask for comics to be held at a comic shop. It's almost like a referral versus us trying to kind of convince a comic store owner that, hey man, people will like our comics. Please carry them. We're independently published, so we are our own publisher. We actually handle all of that stuff, and it helps us to be as creative as we can without having to worry about, someone telling us what not to write. But it's been a great process. It's a lot of work. If you want to get into comics, I will never lie to anyone about that ever, because it is literally like this very oftentimes a very thankless job until you go to like a Comic-Con. Then people can actually say, hey, I love this work, or this looks great. But when you're working, it can feel like you're working in a vacuum, and that can feel pretty thankless, because the comic art fans and so forth, They've been spoiled by Marvel and DC to say they get a new comic every month. Independent comic creators have to balance and juggle their lives. If you have kids, if you're married, if you you got a life, it's a very, very hard juggle sometimes. And so it's not for the faint of heart. But if you're passionate about it, you can definitely do it. This is the best time to come into comics. There's Kickstarters, there's public fundings and all this good stuff. So it's a really, really great time if you're interested in comics. You can get into comics now and publish without ever having to worry about someone telling you, you know what, I like it, but no, we're not going to publish your work. It isn't until you try to get published by an actual publisher that you're offering the opportunity for someone else to judge or tell you if your work is good enough. And that's the thing that we've bypassed completely. We did a Kickstarter back in 2016, and it went really well. We raised about $75,000, $74,000 on the Kickstarter, and more once we got off the actual Kickstarter. So it went really well, really, really well. So that is what I do. Here's Omar. Let me get a little brown in his hair real quick, and I think that should wrap up what it is that I do. Thank you guys for joining me. My website is marcusthevisual.com. Again, you can find me on social media, and you can find Tuskegee Heirs at tuskegeeheirs.com, or also on social media as well. Thank you guys for joining me. Had a great time, and that is what we're doing. You have a great day, and happy holidays.